Are we ready?
I think so.
Do we just say pledge of allegiance?
Yeah, I do see.
It's a budget meeting, I wouldn't.
Okay,
We
good.
can start.
Don't want on my foot anymore now. Jared, are you starting the meeting? I do want to ask, I had a couple concerns about just getting this information last evening. Everybody feel comfortable about going over this?
And I'll tell you the reason that I do. You could have given us these reports a month ago, and until you hear Jared's explanation of what they mean, it really does. Because if you spent 4 hours looking at each line, now if you were on the budget committee and you knew what you were looking for, because you already discussed changes, I could see that. Otherwise, to put this in context, you really need to hear from Jared. So, me personally, I'm perfectly fine proceeding.
Well, I took a lot of notes.
Well, yeah, you were in the budget committee.
Well, that was after the other one. Oh, wait a minute, Jared, you said this one has the latest.
Yeah, there was some minor, so from the version that went out yesterday, minor tweaks. Yvonne and I just kind of went through real quick, and because the finance committee, we had quite a bit of changes. I'm hoping you guys, I think everybody was taking notes, so I'm not going to be offended if I miss something. That's kind of part of the point of this meeting today. So when we go through the numbers tonight, I don't expect them to be final. I know like in the past we usually are pretty close to final. That being said, we still have some time to make changes before the budget is adopted in October, right? So having said all that, even if we leave tonight with maybe a couple of open items, they likely to be addressed at the next council meeting in like 2 weeks.
So it's a good starting point anyway.
Yeah, I mean, so to that down to the way what we've done to get to this point. So what we do is I go through and update all the information with estimates, information that we have year to date on cash balances of funds. I've met with Yvonne, and Yvonne has talked, I know, with the different department heads, and we kind of did our first pass based on what we know, things like health insurance changes or like budget items were going up, costs increasing, and so we made our first kind of pass at the numbers. Then last week we had a meeting with what we've kind of designated as the finance committee, and so at that meeting was myself, Yvonne, Jenny, Jim Robinson, Steve Poole, Bob, and then Chad and Terry were there as kind of the council representatives, and we spent, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours going through all these numbers and talking at length about all kinds of different things. And so after that meeting, took all that information back and put it into my kind of schedules here, and that's where we are tonight, in which, so hopefully we've made some progress. Nothing has been approved. There's been, of course, recommendations. Things are subject to change, discussions to be had. But this is where we are tonight. And my plan is to go through, I'll say it because I can't help myself, but you'll hear me refer to Form 1. What that means, you should have 2 handouts in front of you, a single page, and then 2 pages with a whole bunch of lines in tiny print. I apologize. That's the Form 1. That's the line item budget, and it's broken down by fund.
It's 3 pages.
It's 3 pages, excuse me. And so we're going to go through that and talk about the changes that you all discuss. There's no voting or anything tonight. I'm going to let the department heads speak to their items, changes, requests, things like that. And then hopefully we get through the evening with some numbers that we can take and move forward with. And if there's open items, we'll get them answered. The process to get the budget approved legally, so this isn't a required meeting by any means. The required meeting is you must have a public hearing and you must have an adoption. right now, those are tentatively scheduled for the adoption meeting would occur on October 2nd. That's a regular meeting, I
Correct.
believe.
Yep, correct.
And the public hearing would be September 18th, which is also a regular meeting. We try to schedule them during regular council meetings. If we need to have a special meeting, we just need to do kind of proper notice for that. But
What is the public meeting again?
public hearing on September 18th. So we can really change the budget up until the adoption. So just know that we do have some time. I know we've tried to be early here so that it gives you guys, I know you might feel like last minute, but we still have a lot of, some
There's a
time
lot
to
of
discuss.
steps.
Yeah.
It's kind of like writing your essay in college, you gotta go and write it, and
Do
you
an
gotta
outline.
tweak it, and
Some of us
peer
just do it the night
review,
before.
and it's been a while. Hey, don't tell me that. It's been
You can
long.
get anything on the internet nowadays.
But-
Well, that's true, not just, and we can't start this until after we have all the numbers from June and everything reconciled so that we know where our starting point is.
So do you want
So
to
leave-
cover that real quick? Like
Yeah.
DLGF, the 4B, how the 18-month kind of thing?
Yeah,
Okay. So the
don't
single
confuse them
page
too much.
in front of you is, I call it the 4B, so that's DLGF, which is Department of Local Government Finance. They are the state body that approves your budget. The way they kind of review, analyze the budget, it's like on an 18-month window. So if you follow along with me, I'll go through this schedule. This is like the cash flow of the funds for 18 months. So we're gonna just look specifically at the general fund, so that's the top one, 1101. What we do is we start with the cash balance at June 30, 2024, which is what Yvonne just said. So we start there, so $2.2 million. We look at what property taxes we expect to collect the rest of 2024, so July 1 through December 31. In the general fund, we have about $318,000 we expect to receive in our December 2024 settlement. We also then look at what miscellaneous revenue we expect to receive July 1, 2024 through December 31, 2024. In that number is like things like your lit, certified shares. There's a whole schedule that has all that detail out. Traditionally, most councils don't care to see all, that's kind of into the weeds, but we basically quantified about $309,000 of miscellaneous revenue. We then look at what budget we have available to spend from our 2024 budget. So that column there that says expenses 2024-6 months, that we took the 2024 budget for the general fund. We looked at what we spent through June 30, 2024, and we took the difference, and that means we have $778,000 of budget available to spend the rest of this year. So that assumption, DLGF assumes that you're going to spend your entire budget. Historically, almost all the time, in all the communities I work with, you don't spend your entire budget, like, just the way it goes, right? But the numbers all reflect that assumption. So when we get to the end here, kind of, I'll circle back to that, but it'll make sense. But so then you take that cash balance, you add those projected revenues, you subtract the expenses to come up with a projected 12/31/2024 cash balance. That's the $2,082,000. So now, all of that just to say we've now got to January 1, 2025. We're projected. So from there, you have the proposed property tax levy column. And so you'll see the $897,000. That is a number, that is a variable number. For the sake of what we're looking at, the $897,275 and the $135,000 at MVH, those two numbers fall under what's called the maximum levy. So levy is what we can charge, property taxes we can charge. So you have a maximum amount that is set, and every year the state allows you to grow it by a percentage, 4% in 2025. Also, to throw a little wrinkle into it, if you're a community that is rapidly growing, like New Palestine, you have the ability to appeal and get your levy increased by more than that 4%. And you guys most definitely qualify. You guys are probably like one of the biggest ones. Your 3-year, because it's based on your 3-year average, your 3-year average assessed value growth in New Palestine is 22%. So you're going to qualify. We're going to be, the idea being that like all these guys can speak to that. As all these homes, all this assessed value is coming in, the services required to, the resources required to provide those services is increasing more than just 4% inflation, right? So, so that's a mechanism that the state has given towns to increase their levy beyond just kind of the baseline minimum inflation.
So what happens when you increase that by more than 1%?
More than 4%?
Yeah,
The levy goes up. What actually ends up happening, it's a neutral, and because like say, so think about like arithmetic. If your assessed value goes up 10%, the assessed value times the tax rate is your levy, right? That's the math. If your assessed value goes up 10% and your levy goes up 4%, then your tax rate's actually going to go down. That's all well.
That's what happened last year.
But you don't have the resources to provide the services. So the way these calculations work out is levy goes up by 10%. By the time we get through kind of these levy appeals, because they kind of like every year, if you have a couple of big years because of 3-year average, you kind of qualify for a couple of years. What happens is the tax rate ends up at the same spot it would have had AV and levy gone up at the same rate. That makes, so think about it this way, that your AV goes up 10%, your levy goes up 10%, the tax rate's going to remain the same.
okay.
It's hard to, like, I mean, and I can show you some illustrations and stuff, but the way it's designed is for communities that experience significant growth, which you guys had, I think last year was 34% from 22 to 23, and from 23 to 24 it was 25%. And I will expect, we don't have the 25 AVs, but I would guess that 25 is going to be a double-digit increase as well. And the reality is that's the service we have to provide for today. And we don't even get to count that in our calculations.
Does some of that make sense? If
It
it
does.
doesn't, it didn't to me either, okay? It's taken me 4 years to understand.
And you're going to see it again because you're going to have to approve a resolution to apply for that appeal.
The levy appeal, we'll explain it again
Yeah.
another time, but it's just so that our tax money coming in is equivalent or close to it to the amount of services we have to provide because of the growth of the town. The state indicates that, hey, as a state, we've grown 4%. That's all you're going to get. But we grew so much faster that we're going to ask that, hey, you know, there's a big difference there. Please help us out with that, and that's what that excess levy appeal. And we'll come back to that.
The 4% is based on the non-farm personal income of the whole state. So some are more, some are less. The average across the state is 4%. You guys are obviously a lot more. So it's those, I got communities that AVs actually went down, so they're actually coming out ahead. They experienced a tax rate increase just with the state, 4%. Yours should be tax rate neutral when it all like kind of sorts itself out.
So that increase, if we applied for an increase, does that fall back off after we quit growing?
No. Once you get levy, you always have it.
Okay,
You don't have to use it,
right,
but you have it.
okay.
But most places don't have just so much
Growth.
resources, they don't need their levy. So
Yeah.
I don't get caught too much on this because I know we got to get through a lot. So we have property tax levy, then we have an allowance for circuit breaker loss, which we could spend a whole meeting, but basically that's money you don't get to collect. So we account for that. Then you have the 12 months of miscellaneous revenue. So this is all 2025. So we projected $800,000 of miscellaneous revenue in the general fund. Then The Form 1, we're gonna go through that next. The sum of all of the line items for the general fund equal $1,659,938. That's your budget, right? Like that's what we think we're gonna spend. I put that receipts versus disbursements. I think on some of the funds, it's important to understand that like as the numbers, all the numbers you see now before adjustments, it's a balanced budget within $1,800. To my point, you're probably not gonna spend all your budget. You're probably gonna have more revenue than I have in here. I'm an accountant. Yvonne and I've talked about this. We don't know what LIT's gonna do. It's likely going to increase. Right now, I kept it at a 2024 level. So the budget presented before you in the general fund, which is your biggest, your operation fund, is balanced. So that ends, and then you see the ending projected 12/31/2025 cash balance there for the general fund. Any questions, or should I go ahead and head on into the Form 1, the line item of it? And Ryan, happy to, we can have another chat, or any of you for that matter, about these. But hearing it over and over and seeing the numbers and how it works, it starts coming together. So.
Okay.
All right, so if you go to the other packet, the 3 pages there. So the first section here is the general fund, and I think what I'm just going to do is I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to go down. I'll call out different individuals, maybe to speak on behalf of whatever it is. I'll explain what our numbers are. You guys can stop and chat about it. I may rein you back in if it is going to be covered more applicable at a later portion of the numbers, just so we can stay on track. But otherwise, so the first line you see is town council salaries. You'll see an increase there. One thing that came up, I think Jim,
Yep.
Jim recommended that.
I kind of put that in there because with the council, it's your first year and going into the next 4 years. I know you have your 24 meetings. I know you have your preparations before your meetings. But also now you're doing your meet and greets on the Fridays, which is everything's appreciated. We really want to engage you guys more, and we've asked a lot more of you. We're going into a $20+ million wastewater plant for the next couple of years. Several meetings you have to be engaged with that. The town center, that's coming up. There's going to be a lot of engagement there. The AIM Summit, we've always appreciated any time that council goes to the AIM Summit, and that's a few days, so there's a lot of hours spent there. The county EDC meetings, and now this year we rolled out the comprehensive plan. So there's a lot of engagement, there's a lot of things that goes on, and we just appreciate the effort and the time that you have to put into it. So I just wanted to make sure it was compensated for. So that's why I thought it would be.
So Jim is proposing to
Yeah.
raise your fees.
Yeah, it's currently 7,000, and this, as you see, is 8,500 there. So
It still breaks down to $2.47 an hour, but
but I mean,
Which is pretty good money.
So you guys discuss this, and you can decide whether you want to do that or want to do it differently, or want to just raise the president's income because the president is a more difficult situation than the rest, or if you want to say, hey, maybe we'll consider this next year, or, not at all. So,
and I look at it, you're here for the 4 years, compensate for the 4 years that you're here. If we wait until 2 years, then it's, but that's totally your decision. And that's a decision. It doesn't have to be made tonight. It's just
No.
introduced. So,
but the numbers reflect that.
yes.
So, good. Okay. The other, almost everything else, we have put in, and this is subject to your all's discussion, because you guys have, we put in a 5% increase, like salary increase for all positions, except for when noted. We'll talk specifically. So, for example, the next line is clerk treasurer salary. Obviously, it looks, this is general fund. So Yvonne, as clerk treasurer, she gets paid from a couple of different funds. She gets paid from the general fund, wastewater fund, MBH maybe. Like she's spread out, but this is the general fund portion of that. One thing, Chad, I don't know if we want to, probably be more applicable to talk about it when we get down to like Steve's stuff, but like, we added her longevity. Remember, we made some adjustments for the whole department head discussion? We want to have that when we get to Steve's, the MDH section.
Yeah, we
What you proposed or recommended or
Yep.
whatever on that? Okay.
Yeah, so everybody's looking at me, so we'll go over it right now. The only department head, or the only person in the town that does not receive longevity pay is the clerk treasurer. It's an elected position. I think there was debates before us on what should that be. To me, there is longevity pay is basically saying, hey, I want to retain this employee, right? And I think that's what the incentive is for the rest of the town, and I think it should apply to our clerk treasurer as well. If we make a salary adjustment for the clerk treasurer, it stays for the clerk treasurer. Like it doesn't go back and forth, right? And I think longevity pay is a incentive to stay in that position. So I suggested adding it to the salary ordinance for Yvonne in that position. Not Yvonne specifically, but that position.
It's $100 a year. These numbers, it's $300 because she's finishing her third year. 24 is her third year.
No, 24 is my fourth year. It's September 27th or whatever.
Well,
20 is when I came
I
up.
forget,
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
So it's a couple $100, but that was one of the tweaks. So it has a 5% increase. That $1,547 includes a 5% increase on her salary, and then the inclusion of longevity pay of the
Okay.
$300.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
I did not ask.
And we can
for that.
debate it. Like again, to me, it's just one of those things where it seems like, and I'm sure there was good intention when it was done the way it was done, but I think there are key positions in any town, and I think that's one of them where you want to retain somebody, and I think that's an easy way. There shouldn't be a deviation from it for that.
Well, I couldn't agree more on that.
Me as well. And it's, if nothing, it's a shame we didn't do that before.
Additionally, with that, there's also, if you go into your salary ordinance, it's the second to last page. About halfway down, you'll see department head, insurance costs, $1 annually included employee and family members. HSA payment of $1,500 twice annually, so it's $3,000 that the town pays into department heads HSA. For the clerk treasurer specifically, it is downgraded to $750, which is $1,500 annually. So I also motion that we change that to match the rest of the department heads. It's a deviation from, again, I'm sure there was a reason why it doesn't, I don't understand the why, and I would like to create consistency with the salary ordinance. I think right now, as we go through this, there's a couple things in here that we could talk through it in more detail, but the intent with this and any ordinance regarding HR-related functions is consistency, right? And I think consistency is easy to do in that way.
I agree with
I agree.
that.
That would add $1,500 to our
Yeah.
budget overall.
And it's in, we'll get to that line item, but it's included in these numbers already, so. Yeah, it's up.
And again, we'll have to approve a new salary ordinance that changes the verbiage of those things and includes that longevity piece. The other one with the salary ordinance, I'm just hitting them all right now. There was a proposal to pay double time for worked holidays for the deputies. Right now, they receive $100 a shift that they work. They're the only ones called out differently, which again, there may have been a reason for that, but I believe if they work a holiday, they should receive double time just as our full-time employees would. If you see at the bottom when it says police officers, very bottom there, police officers who work a town-recognized holiday will be paid additional $100 for the shift they worked. All other full-time employees will be paid double for worked holidays. Doesn't make sense to me to have that deviation. And I think one of the things that Chief brought up is it's sometimes harder to get people to volunteer for those. Obviously, there's a reason that you pay double time for holidays and any other job function. It makes sense to do the same here. And then the last one, this one's a little bit of a head scratcher, so stick with me here for a second. there's a telephone stipend for one of our employees. Another employee has a town phone, and they pay back like $21.03 every 4 weeks or something weird like that. I think for consistency's sake, if you need if the town wants you to have a phone where we can call you and contact you at any time, the town just pays for the phone. There's not a we pay you a stipend or you pay us back. It's just consistent. So right now we do it 2 or 3 different ways, and it's confusing and causes a lot of issues. So my proposal on that is to eliminate that and just say if we want you to have a phone, we're not doing a stipend, we're not having you pay us, this is your phone, town owns it.
Well, I agree with that, and I think that's pretty consistent across the board. And I know for the county, if you have a phone and you're on call, the county provides you a phone and you're available. And that's just the way it works.
Yeah, we just do some inconsistencies on it, and I'm sure it's, a lot of these things are, you make a small change and then it adds and it adds and it adds. I think this is a
Well,
good
it's
time.
a headache for
Correct.
the
Well,
calculations and all.
we've ran into issues too with this, right, where it's a weird pay function, so.
We
You
talked
know,
about
hard
this,
to
I think, a
use.
little bit when we first came on the council, and I think we talked about this whole cell phone issue, so I'm glad that's getting sorted out.
Yeah, I think that's a good move there. Going through here, trying to see if there's any other ones that I'm missing.
With that salary ordinance, it's just over the years, there must have been little rules that were different for this person, different for that person. When I took it on, there were more exceptions than there were rules. So I've tried to kind of start smoothing that out over the years, but these are things that are still hanging out. The one repayment of $24.03 caused a lot of headache because it caused our stuff to go. It wasn't a known thing, and one of the accounts went kind of crooked because of it, and it took somebody at Jared's firm like hours and hours and hours to figure out why it went wrong. So it's just,
Let's just make
it was
it
a
easy.
pain, and this would be a wonderful time to kind of streamline things for the following years to come. Because this is really every year that salary ordinance gets tweaked a little bit, but if we can smooth out some of these inconsistencies, then that's a nice basis to grow it over the years.
Anytime you can simplify government,
Simplifying would be lovely.
I got
And
my
consistency.
And consistent.
consistency. I got my notes, so I remember the other ones. An additional stipend, and sorry if they're listening, for Kyle Connor as the superintendent of the wastewater. Currently, there's no differentiation between him running those members, so, sorry.
This is not a salary ordinance discussion, though. That is part of a different discussion, because wastewater is not part of the budgeted side of the town's finances.
But
So if you
Got
want to
it, but it
skip
will be in
over
the
that,
salary ordinance, correct?
it will be in the salary. And what we'll do, Chad, is let's do another conversation during a regular town council meeting, and
Okay.
we can cover all of them, but since that's not part of the budget, let's skip that because you have so many line items to go over,
Agenda for
Yeah,
tonight.
yeah, we got it on the agenda for tonight, to Bill's
Yeah,
point, so.
we'll-
we can
we'll
cover
bring
that.
it up.
You can cover it tonight, or we can put it on another budget or another meeting, and we can hash it and rehash until we get it where we want it to be.
Yeah, perfect.
It's there. Why put off till tomorrow what we can do today?
I'm fair, I'm
All
all
right, Jared,
with
I
you.
think I got everything.
But it's,
All right, well, we'll keep
Budget
marching on here. So the finance clerk, town manager salary, deputy clerk treasurer, admin, well, all those have 5% increases. That's what it contemplates.
Does that include benefits?
That is just their salary. Benefits are down below in the Social Security, Medicare, in PERS, and health insurance.
Okay.
We have accounted for all those changes, but that's just their salary.
But does it
Your
include the
bottom line reflects that.
longevity?
Yeah, it has longevity in it.
Okay.
We have a whole, we have a salary database that has all the employees, and then we take it and it rolls into here.
Yeah, because I calculated it and it was more than 5%, but that makes sense if the longevity is in there.
Yeah, so everybody got $100 more. The one that's different is the admin assistant, which is Susie.
Yeah, we'll get to that. That's part of your agenda for the town council meeting. But, so what we'll discuss at the town council meeting is already changed in here in the budget. We'll discuss it at the town council meeting in more detail, but just rest assured that the amount is in this budget. So as we go on, really all these new numbers, anything that has been discussed in the finance committee or in any other situation, those tweaks have been made in here so that you have a total number that is based on previous discussions that you can still change, okay? So it's just your worksheet, but it's in here. Does that make sense? I'm kind of talking in circles.
There was a planning commissioner wage we had talked about last year when we were doing the 24 budget of possibly creating that position. We took it out, and one of the reasons is we don't, well, it may be something we need here in the future. I don't think 25 is going to be the year for that anyways. But we did talk about adding a new town laborer, and that is in here. So we didn't do anything to the building inspector, planning commission wages. Just know that planning commissioner salary, we took that away, and I'll get to labor here in just a second. But deputy marshal salaries, obviously that's our police. So that increase has quite a few things in it. One is the 3%. So we did 3% increase across the board for them. It has a new
officer.
It includes a whole additional new officer. It has a potential officer increase in there, allowance.
For a staff or a sergeant position.
Sergeant, okay. And you feel free to chime in or
No,
speak to, but like, so it has a lot of moving pieces in there that we had talked about. We did 3% for them as opposed to like 5, I think.
Right, 'cause we
And
did
Bob, of course, for the record, was an advocate for his guys to get as much as possible, but I know last year we did
a true up last year.
really significant true up to those guys, I think, and,
Yeah.
I think the way the numbers and everything are working out, that it's,
Yeah, it's more of just a cost of living was always being asked for. There's no big raises across the board. It was just more of a true up from last year and then a cost of living like everybody else was receiving.
yeah.
So, and then a sergeant's position and then a new position. And we budgeted high for a possible lateral transfer, meaning that I can maybe get somebody from another agency who could come over and already has the experience instead of starting with a brand new deputy and, babysitting for the first year. And then, so yeah, you can start at a lower salary, but what we really need in this town is somebody who's probably got some experience at this point where we can get them to work as soon as possible because the growth out here is exploding.
And then also, you have requested the overtime holiday pay.
Yeah, so we talked about the overtime holiday pay. There's like 10 full holidays, 2 half holidays, about 11 holidays. 3 officers usually work per holiday, mornings, evenings, and nights. So I think we figured out an additional about $15,000 to put into that.
I put 20 in for.
More than enough, yeah.
Allowance, yeah. That basically they would get double time.
Double time
if they
for the
work
holidays,
Those
yeah.
holidays versus, what are they getting out?
$100.
They get 100, so if they work on Christmas, they get $100 more for the day.
And I can tell you why the $100 was years ago, when the town was still small enough. The old clerk treasurer said basically was, our town was small enough that we weren't required to pay overtime to the deputies because of our size of our department and everything. We didn't have to have it. Well, now we're big enough, the town's big enough, we need to compensate the officers for having to come in and work these extra holidays. Because now my guys too, if they want to if they want Christmas off, they actually have to burn a day to have Christmas off, where myself and the office here get the day off paid. So to me, it's kind of a fair shake that we take care of those guys that actually come in and work that holiday.
Absolutely.
So that's all factored into the okay, so the general labor, one of the discussions that came up, I think right now, Steve and the street department are utilizing the wastewater guys. And obviously, feel free to correct me, but bottom line, there's a need for, I think, more of a general town manager or town laborer instead of the wastewater guys helping when they can, which, you know, with a new plant, you know, possibly a new plant and come on, you know, those resources are becoming limited. So we looked at the numbers. We had that planning commissioner salary in there, and one of the things we talked about the finance committee was like we could get a very qualified laborer in here that could help Steve and Jim and, you know, around town. There's plenty of work there that needs to be done. So we added that position in here, so that's new. Jim or Steve, did I miss anything, or is that?
No, I think you've got it right. Like I said, the goal there is to kind of split that wastewater department, street department, because really the street department utilizes all the help, because that's where our labor is from the wastewater, when we do street sweeping, when we do patches. There's a lot of things that we rely on the wastewater, so if we can get Steve some help to do that, we can slowly separate those departments and kind of manage them like they should be, so.
I think one thing we got to play with the words, Chad, right? So we called it, so right now they're wastewater / street laborers is what the current guys are doing. So we call this guy the street / wastewater labor. So it's kind of their priority is, you know, with Steve, and then, you know, if they've got capacity and they need the help down there, you know, on the wastewater side, then they can bounce over there to do that. And then
It's like
Steve-
it's like focus and additional. Is
Yeah.
just the thought there.
So that's what that would be a new position. And then town marshal, so that's just got the 3%. There's no changes beyond that. There's overtime, no changes. So then we've got town share, Social Security, Medicare, PERF. That's all factored in based on the change in salary. Those are the amounts, the increases. The PERF increase, did it not, the contribution percentage increase?
Not for PERF, but for the 77 plan,
Yes.
it increased to 19.2
Yeah.
or 19.3%, from 17 point something. So, and I'm sorry, I didn't write down the exact
Well,
percentage,
in
but
the-
we looked it up and we verified within PERF.
20.3.
So,
32.
okay. So the PERF is for your town employees, 77 plan is for the police officers. There's only 5 police officers on the 77 plan. 77 plan allows for more protection for a police officer. But we pay a little bit higher rate. And this year, PERF rate of 11.2% stayed the same. But the 77 plan went from 19 point something percent to 20 point something percent. So that's the change.
Okay. Jared, can we go back up to the general labor
Yes.
at 35,000?
Yes.
Is that enough?
So that's just the general fund portion. So we
Oh, okay.
allocated.
Gotcha.
I know it's always tricky. So
Yeah,
I think the total
I always
on
forget about that.
I can tell you what
52, I
we
think.
assumed. It looks like
Well, I just saw the $15.
yeah, but I didn't.
Oh, that's
see
15,000.
over that. I can tell you we budgeted,
Got better, 50.
yeah, about 50,000, so 49,920 was what, $24 an hour full time.
Okay, thank you.
So it's kind of split between general fund, MVH, and wastewater.
Hey, you got an application? Just kidding.
You should. All right. Health insurance is next. So we looked at our insurance premium from this year, talked to the insurance agent, we won't know the health insurance until like October, November. They said to budget or estimate approximately 10% increase. So we put that in there. And then Chad touched on it a little bit earlier with the change with those department heads. There would be an increase in the HSA contribution of $1,500 each, so $3,000.
Yeah.
So that's also included in this number as well. Any questions? That kind of covers the employee benefits, personnel services section. Then we kind of get into the operations or the day-to-day. So office supplies, I think we just looked at what we were spending, what we think we're going to spend, and we bumped that up $1,000. The handful of them there that remained unchanged, Marshall supplies, fuel, Bob didn't think that was a concern. The next change, if you see a line and you want me to stop on it, but obviously we didn't make any change, there's no change requested. But down to the town attorney line, I think you guys have your current contract is for $4,000 a month, so that's $48,000 a year. And then there's current litigation going on this year, and I think the idea was, we had talked about it, that you're probably going to have additional expenses with your attorney. I mean, we don't really know, because we don't know what's going to be required, but seems to be not slowing down.
What does our 4,000 a month cover? Do we know?
The general
Just being here?
meetings being here and the phone calls and
Yeah,
the
we
changing
call 'em a lot.
ordinances and creation of resolutions.
There's a lot of
Lots
communication.
of questions.
But that's, I mean, I'm just making
That's the
sure
retainer, yeah.
all of that's covered in the 4. Like
That's
when we ask
covered.
him to redo an ordinance or the process of, that's covered.
Yeah. What's not covered is any kind of court case,
Right.
litigation, any of those things outside of that. Of course, we're trying to recoup some of that if
Right.
we, win the case, obviously. Cases,
Right.
I mean,
Right.
it's, it's a layered cake there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're gonna we already know we're going over the budget now, but what the budget doesn't, or what those numbers don't reflect is if or when we get some money reimbursed from those expenses at some later date. So, but we raised it just to give ourselves a little bit more of a cushion. And the attorney contract can be renegotiated at some point. May want to consider that.
So if we have a great year with no litigation, we won't spend 80,000.
That would be lovely.
Unfortunately.
Correct. The issue with government finances is if we end up spending 70,000, we would have to approve an
Yeah.
additional,
No, I'm
what's
with
it
you.
called again?
Additional appropriation.
Additional appropriations.
It's not a problem.
Which
So
is
that-
not a big deal.
That brings
not a
up
big deal, but-
point. These numbers just give us the ability to spend like under approval. Of course, we don't have to spend it. If we go over, there's mechanisms in place in additional appropriation. But just always like to remind, it's not saying we're spending $80,000. It just gives you the ability to without getting approval from DLG.
Right.
Well, and your budget is a very good roadmap, but every year, at the end of the year, we also transfer money from funds to kind of reconcile what the reality
Not from
was.
funds, but from
From
different appropriation
accounts.
numbers.
Yeah.
So long as
Budget.
it's within the services area of that
Yeah,
fund.
accounts.
If one goes over a little bit and the other is under, there's a quick transfer.
Yeah.
If there's a major difference, it goes through the council for,
So specifically,
more
exactly what
specific.
she's saying, if you look at the 80,000 and then the 2,500, those are both professional services. They're both services and charges. If we spend 81,000 on the town attorney line and we spend nothing on the clerk attorney line, we can move $1,000 of the budget. Like we can lower the one to 1,500, make it one. she actually has the ability to do that, because really you're approving within these kind of major categories, but.
We're
that's-
giving you the details on
Yeah,
this.
that's an exact example, but, so we made that adjustment to the town attorney. You see the next three lines remain the same. IT, we increased that budget. I don't know if you want to talk to.
I'll kick this one.
Go
With,
ahead.
with having to televise and record everything, there's more going into there. We're ahead of most towns with our ability to do that and the fact that we've already been doing it. So this is just keeping us in line with that and ensuring that we don't fall behind. Same thing that we've talked about before. If you wait 4 or 5 years before you address this, you get hit with the big bill and it feels like a lot. Like, go ahead and increase that expenditure right now. Make sure that we don't fall behind. Anything to add?
I think, no, it's just the law is that as of July 1st of 2025, and the old towns have to record and broadcast, not broadcast, have available recordings of the meetings online, and we are ahead of that because we've already been doing that. So, yeah, you're good.
Right,
Well,
so,
I'm just used to people in the audience recording. I figured they were available.
Well,
yeah, on that
I'm
note,
sorry. Moving right along.
Body cameras,
Let's not
that's a
digress.
contract, that's for Bob, we're still good there. Postage. The next adjustment is travel allowance. I think you guys have been active in the training, and not just you, but everybody in the town. And so, of course, it comes with a benefit, I think, significantly outweighs this. You guys know, because you've been to these classes and learned. You know what you know already at your first 6 months in the job. So just kind of looking at what we've done year to date, we made an adjustment there. Go down, everything's the same. The insurance line, along the same premise of the health insurance, it's about a 10% increase in that. Water bill went up a little bit, so just trying to cover that, $200. The next one is the elections, which, Chad, we do have to pay for the elections.
I was not a fan of this one. I asked a lot of questions, just so you guys know. Why are we paying for an election? But
So yeah,
Because we
when
have
there
to.
was an election last year, we had to pay our proportionate share, however the county divvies it up. We don't have an election in 25, so we don't have to pay for it. Next one is janitorial services. I think Yvonne wants to get some deep cleaning going.
well, right now we have a service set up, and we've talked about this before, where I would like to go ahead and just talk with janitorial services and see if we can renegotiate the project or the contract a little bit so that they can do a little bit more than they're doing now. Right now, we're getting the bare minimum clean. Bob's in charge of cleaning his own area. One of us has to run the vacuum cleaner in the big sink room every now and then. That's currently, none of that's covered. The hallways never get done. Back here never gets done unless we get a new.
I do it.
Yeah, I do it. We all
We all
on
do it.
occasion do it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't get done by the janitorial services gal, because the contract, I don't know when the contract was made, long before I ever came along here. So it's at least 4 years old. I think it would be nice to see if we can get them to do just a little bit more. The fact that the chairs get clean is because every now and then they send a new girl and she does the chairs. And then when they send another replacement, she will clean this counter a little bit. But other than that, if the regular girl comes, she can only do certain things. So they're very limited. And I am hoping that if you're okay with it, that we may spend slightly more on the cleaning person and get slightly more done.
When's this contract up with your current person?
I don't know.
No,
Oh.
For now, I just want to put it in the budget, have you guys say, yeah, that sounds like a good plan, or no, we don't want to do that, and then we'll go through the details, and I'll bring it to you in detail at that time. And this is just to try to at least get it in the budget so that if there's an increase in cost, that we can accommodate that. Again, doesn't mean that we will spend it, right? I mean, if we go talk to them and it just seems outrageous to do more, then we just don't.
Okay.
The landscaping budget, and, there was some discussion about doing more with that fund.
Jimmy, you wanna take
Would that be me?
Jim,
Well,
Yeah.
I just know in the past, generally our landscaping was really what we kind of had here at Town Hall. We've picked up a roundabout, we've picked up a few little things that we've done in town, but if it's something that we need to increase, though, although we did go to the EDC to help us out with, or the RDC to help us out with some of our, maybe like the roundabout, next year, or, maybe it could be a project. So
Then
what are
we
you thinking,
discussed
Terry?
Flowers hanging from the
Oh,
lights.
yeah.
And in years past, in the past few years anyway, Jen and I have bought flowers to put out here and pumpkins and straw and that kind of stuff. So it would be nice if the town could take care of that rather than us
Us.
personally. Not a big deal if you do, but, just trying to make the town look a little bit more inviting.
Well,
than it
Kyle's
otherwise
growing
would be.
pumpkins for us this year
Yeah.
out of the sewer plant,
Yeah.
so we will have some pretty nice pumpkins.
Probably have some tomatoes down there too.
Uh-huh.
But we
Those
won't
juicy
be-
ones.
More than that.
The next item we adjusted there, you'll see, that's training and meetings. It's along the same lines. One of those lines is the pay to go for the classes. The other one's the actual travel, or if there's mileage or hotel accommodations. We reduced the planning and zoning enforcement. I think we just kind of looked at what we've been doing and felt like 3,000 was more than we needed. Same with code book revisions. I think that number for 24 was significantly higher because there hadn't been anything done for
It hadn't
many, many
been-
years.
Yeah,
And now it's a maintenance thing, so we would have to incur that sum of money or expenses. Couple other lines, you got other, then you got like capital outlays, so this is, you got other equipment, and then town and marshal taser, is that a contract?
Contract as well.
Yeah, so it's an annual contract. So overall, the proposed budget, it's a $180,000 increase from 24 to 25. That's just the general. Questions?
In the comment on that seems like a large increase, but that's adding a deputy, that's adding a street laborer. So all in all, not as big of a sticker shock.
Yeah. So what I would say is go back to that the 4B, the page we covered first, general fund line. So you'll see the total budget proposed, the $1,659,938 shows up right here in that budget column. So it's kind of how it cash flows. And I mentioned earlier, it's a neutral balanced budget, as you will, and $1,800. So all the things we discussed would be included in there at kind of a neutral cash flow impact
For the general,
for the general fund. Yes.
okay,
We're going to
because I'm seeing a lot of parentheses.
Yeah, we'll be all right. I got you. Well, I got an explanation for him, right, Bill? No. All right. So general fund. So the next schedule, or excuse me, the next fund is LRS. So that's your local roads and streets, and so that fund you get LRS money. So that's typically a capital fund. You'll see we got the IMPO. I think that's a membership thing, Steve?
Yep, annual membership.
Yeah, so $1,500, and then we, you bring in about $51,000 a year in that fund. So we've got $50,000 repair and maintenance, street repair and maintenance. This is Steve's fund. This is the street department fund.
Yeah.
Used for his
Yeah.
stuff. So we budget. That's what we budget there. There was no change from the prior year. The next fund is the MVH fund. So here is where the street commissioner salary is. There's a change there. I think Steve, you had requested an adjustment, kind of
Yeah,
You wanna-
kind of more in line with a department head and just the type of work I do. I tend to do more grant writing, consulting, and engineering type of work now than I have before. So I think it just a little more in line with that. I'm also the ADA and Title VI coordinator for the town. I put those plans together on the town's only ERC, which is employee and responsible charge, and every town has to have one to be eligible for any state or federal funds. So, and I've also picked up on doing the all our MS4 inspections.
So part of this is, Steve, is currently are you salary with overtime? Is that,
I think that's how
is that currently?
it comes out of my paycheck
No,
as
he's currently
hourly.
hourly plus overtime.
Yeah.
And so one of the things
yeah.
with the salary ordinance discussion was, and Chad kind of spearheaded, I guess, is with the addition of the laborer, he then would be more of a department head, which should be a salary position. So the number here that you see, the 69,800, would be a salary and therefore no longer overtime. So before he was at 63,700 with about 7,200 overtime. Okay. So this would be actually a change to a salaried position. There's some other changes to being a department head. We talked about the HSA and so the insurance, stuff like that. But there's kind of a lot of moving. Chad, do you have something you want to add to that, or?
No, I think you added it.
Can you speak to the change from 23 to 24?
The 39,
Well, that's only what we've spent
is
so
that,
far, right?
yeah, that was actual. So
Oh,
So
no.
you're
there was another position I took it. There was the infrastructure advisor
Yes.
position. Trying to think, there was a lot of moving pieces back then.
That position was eliminated.
Yeah, the position
poor
is.
Steve
so
will
it was
cut you into
absorbed.
3
Was it eliminated
positions?
or was it absorbed into your role?
It was actually absorbed into his
Right.
role.
So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the change in salaries. It was absorbed, and
Yeah.
that's why the big increase from 23 to 24.
That's right.
Right.
Okay, that's fine.
That was what was actually expended, because it was only for a portion of the year. In 23, he was, the street commissioner was getting paid.
Okay,
That only reflects 6 months, 7 months.
okay.
It's hard to think back. And currently, so he would go, and I know that you got this, but maybe you didn't 100% get the wording, but he would go from wages plus overtime to salaried exempt from overtime.
Right.
Just like Jim, just like Bob, just like me, you get paid a salary, and it don't matter. If it takes you 90 hours to do the job, that's what you're gonna work. If it takes you 37, it doesn't make a difference either. 37, I mean, not 90, but like 50 hours or 60 hours in a week, per week. So, salaried, you just don't get overtime the way we have the salary set up here. Salaried, exempt from overtime is the
Yeah.
official word.
Steve, I just want to go on record. Yvonne wants you to work 90 hours a week. I would never ask you to work 90 hours.
I don't think maybe when I was 30, maybe, but
Maybe 90
cut
is a
90
little-
now. Well,
He's getting help. He can't have
Let's
that.
go.
yeah, sure.
So, yeah. So that's the change, the street commissioner.
Okay.
Salary changes is as a result of Steve's request. The street overtime there, to be clear, and Yvonne and I talked about it earlier today, because he's not eligible, that was historically for his position, to overtime, but now he's got a laborer that could incur, that would be an hourly position, so we just we left it in there. We don't really know, it's a new position, what kind of overtime it may or may not require. It's got snow plowing, things like that,
Winter operations and, things
So
like
we
that.
just-
Typically where you run into the overtime.
yeah. So we left that 7,200 is basically, would be for that new labor that you'll see right down below there, the 15,320. So the labor, that's a new position. We eliminated that planning commissioner salary. Then you got town manager, that reflects the 5%. And then social security and impers reflect the changes in salaries as presented above. Let's see, we actually reduced the SALT budget. Steve, given the way the relationship with the school and the way you guys buy salt.
Well, I mean, just, yeah, like last winter was kind of an anomaly. But I think I spent like $4,700. I bought $4,700 worth of treated road salt. The school ended up using like $3,500 worth of it. So actually, the town spent like $1,200 on treated road salt last year, and we still have probably, if I had to guess, I'd say 40, 50 tons down there in the barn. So I just don't think, I know I'm not going to need all that money for salt next year, and I thought it would be a good idea to transfer that over to signs because the metal keeps going up and signs and signposts and everything. So I think I could make better use of the money in that
Yep.
area.
So that then you see we increased the street sign there $1,000. Salt's a hard one because when you need it, you need it. When you don't, you don't. But as I mentioned, it's just the ability, the allowance to spend the money. Doesn't mean you're going to. There were no changes except for miscellaneous. And if you look, miscellaneous, that's a capital outlays category. And this was actually Yvonne's because apparently you guys have problems with people running into your street poles. And you guys are going to pay for them. So you need a budget line to pay for those. And so
Yeah, unfortunately, over the past few years, we've lost a couple of these pretty street light poles to people running into them. And of course, we're just coming out of this issue where you couldn't get any supplies. So these street poles have been on order. Takes a long time to get them. In order to kind of hedge our bet, we'd like to have one sitting in the barn so we can replace a light pole as time goes on, when it's necessary. So that's why I just want it in the budget so that hopefully now that our, issues with manufacturing and whatever kind of go away, but our issues with people hitting the light pole, I'm sure that, that just is going to happen now and then. Hopefully we don't need it.
What is the percentage of times that one gets hit and you do get a police report or you catch the person that hit it versus you don't?
We've been very fortunate. We've always gotten reimbursed. We're just litigating one of them right now. We're going to small claims court.
Okay.
'Cause he said he didn't hit it. But
So that's
Bob
something
hasn't.
we do follow up on, and we do get reimbursed from insurance.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So to that point though, even if we get reimbursed, we don't net budget. We
Right.
have to budget the expense, even if we get the revenue coming in.
Correct.
Obviously from a cash flow, it washes.
Yeah.
But
You have to pay for
we
it.
still have to pay for it, and we're only looking at one side of the transaction.
Yeah, I was just curious on
Yeah.
how many times it actually happens.
Too many.
Four of them, I think. Is that right, Jim?
We've had
Had-
4, and then we still have the one at the roundabout. So
4 in the last,
just this last
Ever?
year.
just this last year?
Yeah.
Dang.
I mean,
You've
up
gotten
the
some
up the
lessons.
street
I think
sign
they're
to say,
magnetic.
please don't hit our poles. New sign.
That's what the extra $1,000 is for.
It's fortify them so they do more damage.
Put spikes on them.
Put a safety vest on, we'll get it more.
So the last line in MVH, so if you guys look at the far left of that, you'll notice that the number there is 2203, whereas all the rest of the numbers are 2201. What happened a couple years ago, you get MVH distribution, the town gets MVH distribution. Yvonne has to take and split it in half. Half of it goes to 2201, which is your MVH operation. That's all the lines we just covered. The other half of that money goes to 2203, which is your MVH restricted fund. Those monies can only be used to effectively repair the roads, right? Is that a,
Road rehabilitation
you
project,
can't pay
yes.
like engineers, you can't pay like, it's
Nope.
really the actual, fixing roads. the anomaly of this is DLGF requires us to budget it all together as if it's one fund. So that's why you see it together with the rest of these. But on the books, in the fund, the cash is all kept separate. What we've done here is, it's an increase. We've looked, we've got a cash balance in that MVH restricted fund. Talked to Steve, he does the community crossing grant program, which for every dollar, you guys have to pay 25 cents and the state matches 75, so it's as good as it gets when it comes to matching grants, I think. So we were looking at the numbers and said, hey, Steve, if we can get you $100 grand, can you come up with a $400,000 project around town? Steve, I think, said, yeah, I could probably find some work that needs to be done. So that's how we got to that number. So it's a $100 investment for a $400,000 project.
Yeah, I mean, it's
It's a
great,
great
it's a great program, you know.
So I know, Ethan, to your question, back to the 4B, we look at the MBH, you see there's it appears as a deficit, $65,000. But $100,000 of that is it's one time, it's not an ongoing reoccurring. So from an operation sustainability, we're really kind of we're in a plus there, 35 grand. Just for that one item, because that's one that, like, when I'm looking at, because MBH is an operations fund which you need to maintain a balanced budget or sustainability. That includes the $100,000 kind of one-time expense out of the MBH restricted. That would, I guess, kind of address that.
It's still an expense, right?
Yeah.
So that's why we're still negative.
Yeah, I mean, we're spending more
Than what
than
we
we're
But that
bringing
money
in.
is sitting in
But
there.
we're spending the cash of that MVH restricted fund, which can only be used for that purpose. It can't be used for salaries, it can't be transferred to the police department, it can only be used to pay the streets. So we're using $100,000 of those restricted funds to match a 25-75 grant. But because the one thing I do, I go through these numbers and I look and I say, well, is this feasible, right? Can we sustain the town? And that jumped out to me. We talked
Can I
about
add to that, Ethan? If you will look at that fund report that you also have, that shows how much money is in that fund. It shows you how much is in that fund as a current balance.
Just the NVH fund?
Look at the MVH restricted.
Oh, I got you.
There's $151,925 sitting in there from all the years where we've gotten money in and we've not spent it.
So you're suggesting that we spend 100,000 of that restricted? Is that what you're saying?
yes.
Because it's seed money for a $400 project. So
Right.
in this case, we can do $400,000
I'm with
worth
you.
of work using $100,000
you.
that's just sitting
I'm
in
following you.
there.
But what you're telling me in terms of the negativity is that that's money we already have, but since we have to put it in a budget that we're going to
Correct.
spend it, that's why that's a negative, but it's
Yeah.
really a positive of 35.
The MVH fund, which is your real operations fund, pays the salaries, pays the salt, pays all that. That's in a positive cash.
Okay,
But because I have to lump 2201 and 2203 together,
I'm with you.
the 2203 is effectively dragging it down.
Okay.
So that's the first thing I saw. I was like, uh-oh, this isn't going to work. And as I went back through, it's like, oh yeah, you have to one-time expense.
Okay.
That's if we get the grant.
Yeah. So,
And if you don't get the grant, you don't spend it.
Right.
Whether it's, this is just a budget. This is not, hey, we're gonna spend this money. This is a budget in case we get the grant to spend it on the roads and get $400,000 worth of work for it.
Yvonne, is it roads only, or could it be roads and sidewalks?
No, it's roads only. I'm sorry, Bill.
I'm just asking.
You can make an extra wide road, can't you?
Instead of a bike lane, we'll make a walk
You can add
lane
width to a road.
See, look at that.
Right next to a road.
with a curb in the middle. Sorry.
The state makes the rules, not the rest of us.
That's why there's ways around it.
Yeah, we're creative. Rules are guidelines.
I think that one's really clear though.
Yeah, they're,
Well, those
it's
are
like a
it's
short
so
explanation.
specific.
Those are roads for golf carts.
That's right.
Oh.
There we go.
You call the State Board of Accounts,
Poor
All right,
Slade.
figure that out.
That's NVH. The next fund here is CCI, which is Cumulative Capital Improvement. And the only revenue source for this fund is cigarette tax, which, as you probably guess, is a declining source of revenue. Those funds are used for capital. And so what we do in that fund, we basically budget all of our resources. You have coming into there about $4,500 a year, and it goes down every year. I suppose at some point it's going to just go up. So we just budget all the resources there. That's the $14,497. It's typically is one of those when something comes up that's unplanned for, and we say, Yvonne, where do we pay for this from? Right? We need something. We need to take care of something. That's a resource she can use to pay for. Contrary to the CCD fund, which is your cumulative capital development fund, also funds utilized there for capital investment. That's a fixed tax rate. You didn't do it this year. Last year you established that tax rate at 5 cents. So as the AV changes, your revenues change on that. So right now you bring in about $125,000 a year. I think one of the things we have budgeted, we kept the budget the same. There's sidewalks, vehicles and equipment. I think historically maybe we've used it to make some car payments. But I think one thing we had talked about is utilizing that fund for future investment in furniture, things like that we're going to need possibly if there's, like a town center or stuff like that. So we put a budget in there. There's not a specific item identified for those lines. Kind of along the same lines of, I think we've used it in the past, like the roof, like when it's, things like the town hall roof, it's unplanned and we need budget lines to be able to make those payments, projects like that. So that remained unchanged from the prior year. The next fund is LECE, which is Law Enforcement Continuing Education. That fund historically was funded with gun permit revenue, but gun permit revenue doesn't exist anymore. Now it's funded with those accident reports at $5 a pop, and there's 5 of them this year. So, needless to say, it's not bringing in a lot of money.
We do get a stipend from the state that kind of replaces that income from the gun permits. At one point, a couple of years ago, I had to send them what we had made on gun permits in the previous few years, and from that they extrapolated a number, and now they just send us that, and then there's the $5 per accident report. That probably costs us about $20 each to process, but that's where the money comes from, and here's where it's on the budget.
So, yeah. So that money can only be used for training and equipment for the police department. Same, we just budget all the resources. So we have the budget there. If they need or want to use it, they can. If not,
It
they're
stays
only
in
going
the
to spend
account
what they
forever.
got, as far as money available. The next category is lit, or local income tax edit. And we historically have used that for, as you'll see, there's some capital outlays, vehicles, kind of going down through there. The $2,000 county economic development, that is our membership buy-in to the county economic development program. We added a line this year called economic development services, and the idea being that that gives us some resources to do whatever we need to do. If there's, whether there's a grant you need someone to doctor grants, or it's kind of an open-ended economic development expense. If there's some specialized economic development person you want to come in and you need to pay for them, you can utilize those resources for that.
So you are saying like a grant writer?
Yeah, I would think you could do something like that. Yeah, it's a services and charges, so
Okay.
Paying for a service would be the category there. Vehicles, $70,000. Jim has a truck.
Truck.
2004.
2004.
He wants to kick it to the curb. No. Probably needs to look at getting something newer. But we've always historically had that budget there for vehicles.
What all would be, you talked in the meeting, that truck would be equipped with a lot of stuff for road
Well,
repairs.
this will be just the service truck for the street department, but next year, when we do the new wastewater plant, we're gonna have to get a new service truck that's gonna have a bigger crane, because our pumps and stuff are gonna get bigger. So we'll have to budget for that next year. You know, when we talk to the Commonwealth, you know, it'd be nice to figure out a way to budget that in, but we're squeezing that wastewater plant in, so.
So next year, with the one with the crane you'll need, that isn't this $70,000?
Yeah,
Oh, it would
our
be.
plant won't be online yet.
Okay.
That's a couple years out,
So
yes.
2026,
Yeah, yeah.
2027.
This is
Yep.
this is one of the ones we talked about. Like,
Yeah.
there's some of these things are reaching into life. So how do we get into a rotation of replacing vehicles, not having a oh my gosh we need to do this. Same
Yep.
thing with deputy squad cars. Like how do we get into a rotation? Something we probably need to get better at to make sure that we don't get hit with all of a sudden, hey, both vehicles in the wastewater, you know, 2 of the trucks at the wastewater plant are dead, so we
Yep.
gotta spend 140. Like, let's get into
Yeah.
the process of rotating those through with their life. But additionally, this, my understanding is this one,
We're gonna have 3 of them here over 20 years old by next year, so.
There's only so many we can give to the school.
Yes.
And then we have kind of like other capital outlay amounts, $35,000. The next fund is the lit public safety, and so this is, these funds can only be used for public safety or the police department. You see it remains relatively unchanged. We did add uniforms and equipment of $15,000, and that would be to outfit that new officer. So it'd be like a one-time uniform with vest,
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It'd be equipping the new officer coming in with everything they're gonna need, from boots to uniforms to the new guns, new tasers. That's $15,000, and that's even including if we have to send them to the police academy, if we have to send them for per physicals. So that would cover a one-time, get everything covered, and then probably next year, unless another officer was to come on, that would cover that officer for this year.
So we added that. The county CAD, is that a contract?
Yeah, it just goes up every year. It's just our records management and our mobile CAD.
Yeah. And then the only other note, so we got police vehicle equipment. So obviously you bring on a new officer, you're probably going to need an additional vehicle. So we had kind of earmarked those budgets to provide for that $45,000 and $23,000.
I do think, Bob, and Bob and I just had a little side conversation while you guys were talking about something else real quick, but the only thing I would like to add in there is the $1,200 that it would take a new officer to go to the training school, because that's the fee that we would be charged for sending him to the school. We could take that out of the budget as you have here, but that happens to be a service and not a supply. So what you were just saying, well, we can, pay that $1,200 out of that line, we can't really, because that's a service and not a supply. So it's a technical accounting type difference.
But
So
could we just take that out of the LEECE, the 9,500, and just be done with
You
it?
can?
Yeah, I'm not worried about it.
Okay,
Yeah.
Fix some problems.
cool
Yeah,
beans.
fix it.
It's $1,200, it's not a massive amount, and there's not even any,
and
We don't know
need
whether
that,
we're
though,
gonna
right?
get
We may
a-
not even need that.
Yeah.
a greenhorn or whatever we're gonna get.
My goal is not to
next
have a
year.
greenhorn,
Yeah.
but, no,
Yeah.
worst case scenario. And if we don't have anybody qualified, we don't just grab anybody, we go through the process again and open it back up.
So that's the public safety. And so we're down here to police donations. So historically, that has been a K-9 fund in which you guys had the fundraiser this year,
Yep.
the golf outing, and, the same idea, but we expanded some of the categories. So, to my point earlier, that to do the golf fundraiser, it costs money, so we actually have to pay the golf course and stuff. So we had to add a couple of lines in there. Well, the golf outing netted a pretty nice
Substantial amount of
sum of
money.
money. We still had to pay, right, the golf course. So we've added a couple of lines in here for like the golf fundraiser supplies and the services. And then we've also kind of expanded it to what Yvonne was just saying. We've added canine supplies and canine services, right? Because we do have to differentiate. And then just to kind of cover, like provide an umbrella, we added a general supplies and general services. So if there's something that maybe doesn't fit those very specific line items,
And this doesn't have to be budgeted. This is really non-budgeted item.
It's a home
You don't
rule
know
fund.
what donation you're gonna get in, but we put it in there just so that, we can set it up, you can see it. But by law, there's no need to budget for donations, because you don't know what you're gonna get in.
So that is one more line item. And so you see all that translates back to the 4B. We're still waiting on some data from the state as far as revenue estimates and stuff, but I'm very confident that my numbers are conservative on the revenue side of things. And obviously the expenses are what we just discussed. So,
Jared, I forgot, on page 1, the Nichols Building Repair and
yes,
Maintenance.
Yes, I didn't make the change because I saw your email and I didn't know even what to do. I had a note, and yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, the brick is really bad on the west side of that building, and actually, we have the expert here in the room about what is it called? Tuck point that it needs. And we probably need to get a quote on what that costs to repair.
Yeah, so she's on the general fund, the 1101, line 363. It's about in the middle. We have I skipped over because we didn't have any changes. The nickel buildings repair and maintenance, we have a line in there. Currently, we have $5,000 in that budget. Your question was, do we need to make a change to that to cover those expenses?
What's the Nichols?
Where the Main Street. Mhm.
Okay. How much do you think,
I think years ago when we were doing, I'd have to go back, but when we were doing the, what grant were we doing years ago? That big one we were involved with. Greenfield. Stellar, thank you. Somewhere we've got a bid for that building because in our Stellar application, that was one of them. And it was probably well over 40 grand, so,
Wow.
yeah. Yeah, it was a big number.
That's a historical building, right?
It is, yeah. And a lot of it, with that clay brick, some of it you can't tuck point. I'm not gonna,
No, because some brick would actually
have to be replaced, yeah, because it's deteriorated so much.
Which you can have access to those.
Yes, yeah.
But you have to use those or to
Yeah.
make it look appropriate.
Yeah.
But they have to be taken out because some of those total faces are
Yeah,
off.
completely.
and crumbling. So those
Mhm.
have to be replaced. You
Yeah.
can't just
Yeah,
repair that.
yeah. So we can have I'll either find that estimate, it's gonna be a few years old, find out who did that, but, or I think Wells, down here on Bentner, they do commercial restoration and things like that as well, and they're here locally. They're across the street from the, certainly, yeah, yeah. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
That's all.
So I guess, should we leave it as it is? I mean, so if you all go through the budget as it is, and then we find out that it's $20,000 and you guys want to do
Yeah.
that, we can adjust the budget.
Yep.
We either put it in now or we can do an additional appropriation, which you all would have to approve anyways. It's kind of indifferent. If you put it in now, we don't have to do an additional appropriation, but we don't know how much to put in right now, is what I'm hearing.
Can we maybe get a quote and when we have the public hearing, we can maybe know at that point how much it is, make the change at that time. Because you have multiple more steps before this is a done deal.
And are we talking about doing just the west side first, or are we talking about do the whole building?
I have no idea.
Well, the west side's in really bad shape because it takes a lot of,
Takes
I think
sun.
the heat and
Yeah.
gets a lot of,
We can get various quotes.
Well, you know,
maybe.
when somebody comes out and
We'll
gives an
definitely, yeah.
estimate, you know, they could give us a professional opinion that
Yeah.
you could do it in 3 stages, or no, you really should do it all. I mean,
is the
I
south
don't
side
know.
all block?
It's a lot of it,
Block.
there's some of it that's cinder block,
Yeah,
and
that's what I thought.
from where there was an opening
Yeah.
there, like a garage or a carriage barn type thing there, because the lintel is still there.
Yeah.
But then they just blocked it in cinder block.
So we can make changes to this, as Yvonne mentioned, up until adoption, basically, which Ethan just goes, speed. So right now, we kind of have on the adoption on October 2nd, the October 2nd council meeting. We have had the public hearing, and we likely have the public hearing on September 18th, trying to do them with the regularly scheduled meetings. Those are the two kind of required meetings. This is a optional meeting, but
Right.
obviously important. So obviously you have a public hearing for a reason, take public input, if we need to make any changes, and then we make changes before the adoption. What we have to do though is, we have to publish the notice of public hearing, we have to put numbers out there, and if you see it or not, we will advertise, what they call advertise high, because if we put numbers out there at this level, and then you come back and say, well, if we put them in just as we see them today, let's say, and then you come back and say, well, we want to do the Nichols building, it's another $40,000, like, we've already advertised at this level, we cannot exceed that. So what we'll do when we advertise, we'll put higher numbers in there to give you room if you want to make changes. You can always go lower, you can go over, or we have to start the process over, which this schedule allows for that, but I don't think you want to do that, but we'll just go through it as we get on. But so just know that, you know, I know you guys, there's a lot, so take it home, digest it, ask me, Yvonne, questions.
So basically, right now, what you're saying, if I look at this worksheet and I see that the 2025 receipts versus disbursements at the bottom is 95 and some change, you're saying that that $100,000 that we're taking out of savings for that potential grant pretty much washes that out?
Yes, I don't, yes, to answer your question very simply, but to,
All I need is simple.
I mean, yes, but I wouldn't look at them in an aggregate like that, because it's not like funds, resources can't just be moved around wherever you need them. That's a kind of a misconception.
They're
People
designated funds.
that don't understand how this
Understand that.
works, because they say, well, why aren't you all see it, why aren't we doing this? We're over here doing this, we're fixing the roads, but we're not fixing the police department, right? Well, NVH has funds that can only be used on roads. Only roads. So while we're out there paving roads and we need to hire a police officer, fortunately we got NVH funds, and we can only use NVH funds on roads. We can't use NVH funds to hire police officers or buy cars. It's just a what if, but like, so to aggregate everything and just say as a lump sum, yes, to answer your question very matter-of-factly, but we also want to look at them independently, each fund, because they have their designated uses and restrictions.
Okay.
Sorry, I gave you the long answer.
Can you maybe also, since Ethan missed the
Yeah.
first initial few minutes, Ethan, the numbers, the income numbers, the tax levy proposed for 25, he used basically 24 numbers, but we're expecting, so this is conservatively put in here,
Yeah.
but we're expecting that to be up, but we just haven't gotten those numbers from the state yet.
Right.
So what looks like a negative may very well end up not being a negative at all.
So, for example, an abatement that falls off,
That makes a difference.
Mm, No, not on the levy. Levy, you said levy.
Levy.
Levy's not likely to change. The lit, which is not, it's in the miscellaneous category there, and but it's a real amount of money. So for example, in the general fund, you get $475,000 of lit. That's what you got in 2024. I'm I'm extremely confident that it's going to be more than that in 25. There's more people around here paying taxes. I've assumed everything at the 2024 level. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to go up 2%. I don't know if it's going to go up 20%. And we kind of get surprised as much as you guys do when the numbers come out. Usually it's on the good side, but the levy, when an abatement goes off, Chad, it just increases your AV. The levy is what it is. Therefore, theoretically, the tax rate goes out.
And the tax rate goes up, yeah, sorry.
On a single home, it's not going to matter, but so you don't get more
Let's say
money.
retirement.
Community. Yeah, no, that's going to help.
Yeah.
That will help
Huge.
And,
tax rate burden.
and again, this is a conservative estimate, if we
Yeah.
say.
Yep.
Got it. My final question, Yvonne, do you feel comfortable with this? You're our finance guru.
I am not your finance guru, but I look at everything from I look at the monies, I also look at the management side of things. I'm confident that we're in good shape. But I don't make the final decision. You make the decisions. I'm just here to manage the day-to-day. I am, yes, to answer your question.
Gauge your confidence. Got it.
That makes our decision a whole lot easier.
Making decisions, grabbing the right.
Just reflect that. Wastewater's a separate,
Yeah.
wastewater's separate, right, all this.
Thank you, Jared.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
When's our next 8-hour session?
Oh,
We're done.
Let